Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martirano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Behavioral Corner. It's me again, Steve Martirano. I hope you're taking note of us. We've been here a couple of years now, hanging on the corner, which, of course, is our metaphor for where we gather and bump into, by pure accident, some interesting people who we think have some great stories that sell and great information to impart about the way we live, the decisions we make, about behavioral health, because that's what affects everything affects behavioral health. So everything is what we talk about here on the Behavioral Corner. Before I get to our guest, just a reminder here, as the year comes to an end, I hope the holidays have been good to you all, and their tight grip on us is lessening as we look ahead into the new year. In any event, do me this favor for my sort of holiday thing. When you find us, look for our homepage where it says subscription, and push that button. That would make my day. I would appreciate that very much. Frequently, we have over the years, when we talk about behavioral health and substance abuse and emotional issues, we often find ourselves mired down in tough stories about difficult topics. And we've got to remind ourselves that there are success stories multiple times across multiple areas. With regard specifically to substance abuse, people get better. We got to remind ourselves of that. They get better. They get better in the millions. It's one of the great, we don't talk about enough little secrets about sobriety. Millions of people are living in long-term successful sobriety. We occasionally, during the year, reach out to someone who's an example of that so that we can remind you it's possible. To that end, we welcome our guest, Lindsey Fetters. Hi, Lindsey. Welcome to the Behavioral Corner.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You didn't expect to bump into us as you were walking around today, did you?
Nope, not total surprise.
You really persist in that nonsense that there's a corner here that we're hanging on.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, Lindsey, thanks so much for joining us. I think I pretty much characterized what we're going to talk to you about. Mm-hmm. I will begin by pointing out that Lindsey has struggled with substance abuse in the past, is now approaching 9 years sobriety, which is a success by anybody's measure. So congratulations. So Lindsey, begin by telling us a little about yourself. Where'd you grow up and what was the family like?
So I grew up outside Philadelphia in the suburbs. I'm the third of 4 kids. And my brother and I are like 5 and 6 years younger than my sisters, who became our subsequent parents. And my dad was an alcoholic. So I grew up knowing that rehabs exist, that alcoholism existed. I don't think I knew what it was, but yeah, I mean, I had a pretty suburban early childhood. But I think I always knew, or I always felt like there was something, I wasn't like everybody else, especially my family. It seemed like everybody could really enjoy each other, and that was just not who I was. I always felt on the outside of my family.
I'm going to explore that a little later. There are commonalities in stories like yours. I like to say, and have done so many times, that all stories of substance abuse and recovery are the same, except they're different.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's similar is when you talk about I didn't fit, this vague notion of an unease, like something's wrong here. Before we go much further, though, you say your father was an alcoholic. What was that a something you understood, the family understood, or was he in AA and in and out?
He was in and out. He didn't get sober until I was about 10. But I have vivid memories of going and visiting him at Karen. I definitely knew he was an alcoholic, and I definitely knew he should not be drinking. But some of my earliest memories are about like feeling like I could have done more to help him to stop drinking if I would have let him know I knew, which is a lot of stuff that I carried for a long time. Obviously now in recovery, I understand that is just nonsense, but that's what I felt for a long
Mhm,
time. So
mhm, mhm.
we definitely were aware. But he was a nice drunk, so it wasn't really upsetting when he was
Yeah.
drinking. But because he was very uncomfortable when he was sober. So, but I remember going to AA meetings with him when he was sober, and thinking, I am not going to end up here. Like, I am not going to end up in these circles. It just sounds
How
horrible.
everybody, it's another common thing. The first time people go to an AA meeting, their first overwhelming thought is, yeah, well, I don't have anything in common with these people.
Yeah.
So I get that. How old were you when you went to the AA meetings with Dad?
I mean, I had to be below 7. So, I mean, young,
Really,
but
very young.
very young. And remember thinking I did not, alcoholism seemed like not like a secret in our family because we were very open. But it seemed like a shameful thing.
Yeah, sure.
It seemed like something that kind of was like a failing, you
Mhm,
know, that
mhm.
that we were different. We were different. Nobody else's parents were like that. You know, that's just my perception that everything was about you know,
You know, I'm interested. I don't believe I've talked to anybody whose family or personally went to AA meetings and brought their young children with them. Was that common? Is it just a function of, well, there's nobody to watch the kids, let's bring them to the meeting? How's that work?
so I don't really know. I mean, my mom was around a lot. I don't really know why I would have gone to meetings with my dad. I also don't think it was like I think he was drinking way more than he was sober. So I don't think it probably happened a lot. I mean,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
but I do remember, and it's possible they could have been family meetings, like my mom
Mhm.
could have been
Mhm.
there. I remember sitting next to my dad in chairs, but again, I was a little kid, so my perception could be very off, but I knew I didn't want to do this.
Yeah.
Like I was not
So
gonna
for you, first of all, your dad's still with us?
No, he passed away from cancer almost 2 years ago. So
I'm sorry to hear that. How did he ultimately get sober?
he did. He was sober for 25 years by the time when he
Wow.
yeah,
Okay. So
yeah,
a couple of things seem to be a family pattern in your life. You
yeah,
know, maybe you learned or inherited alcoholism. Who knows?
yeah,
But you also either learned or inherited
yeah,
recovery, which is very
yeah.
cool. Uh, so let me ask you when your problems began and what shape did they take?
So I think early on, so my dad left when I was 7 and just never came back. I didn't see him again until I was 16. But so there was definitely this like hole. But I mean, I'm somebody who believes I was born an alcoholic. I think I was probably an alcoholic from the moment I existed. Um, so I don't know. I have these memories of like even before I took my first drink of wanting to play house and be like in trouble, you know, like drinking and smoking and being in Saturday detention, which is such a strange thing looking back. But so I wanted to drink. I wanted to be grown up, and I thought that that's what drinking was. Um, so I took my first drink when I was 10. And I took it alone, and that really is something that really kind of filtered its way through my entire story, that like I preferred to be alone. Like I preferred to drink alone. I preferred it, I felt safer 100%. So, and as soon as I took the first drink, I just stole stuff from my mom, who wasn't a big drinker at all. Um, but that was very much something that like I knew I wanted to do and I knew that I had to keep doing. So I don't know
Mhm.
how often I was drinking at that age, but by the time I got to middle school, I met people who also wanted to drink, and we were drinking often, and anything that you put in front of us, we would do, you know? So that
Yeah.
was
That's another pattern.
um
That's another pattern that constantly emerges. There's something ironic about the fact that you say you began drinking because it helped you isolate,
yeah,
and then when you got a little older, you looked for a community of like-minded people.
yeah.
That happens a lot. Do you think that's a way for the alcoholic to, is alcoholic still a proper term?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, just maybe. Do you think this drifting into the social circle that's abusing alcohol is a way of normalizing it? Um,
Yeah.
so
It's
you don't look different than everybody else?
Yeah, like it definitely, it you can justify for a lot longer your using, and you can also, I mean, at least I did. I also could always find somebody worse than me. So that was something that, I mean, I guess until I couldn't, but like it was something that I kind of held on to, like, well, they're worse than me. They're
Right.
whatever.
That's a great insight. I mean, you know, you may suspect that you're hitting it too hard, but as long as
Hmm.
Pop is killing it, then you can't be that bad. It's just
Yeah.
it's an amazing. Are you still, even after all these years of sobriety, amaze yourself with the lies you told yourself and the tricks you played to to
Yeah.
normalize your behavior?
I mean, that's one of the things that with more sustained recovery that I realized that there's a lot of old lies that I've held on to that have justified like character defects that were actually just kind of residual from my early years of drinking and using, like the way I could justify my drinking and using, it's the same way I can justify holding on to those character defects. So it's really like it just kind of it always like plays into itself. And for me, once I'm in enough pain, eventually I'll do something. That's something I do in sobriety, But I do think that it was, I was a master at lying to myself because alcohol was definitely not my problem. It was my solution to everything. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're talking to Lindsey Fetters. She joins us as a voice in recovery. We began by telling you she is now 9 years sober. Her story is very familiar with people who have been there and done that. And you know what, Lindsey, sometimes I wonder when we do these shows, any of these shows, who's listening and who's watching. Certainly people in active use, I don't believe, in general, are scouring the internet looking for stuff like this. And maybe they stumble across this, but I think it's people who are in the beginning stages of recovery or have relapsed and are trying to get back. But more generally, I think they're family members. I really think they're people that are struggling because it's in their lives. Maybe they're not users. What was the effect of all of this on your family? Now your dad was gone for the bulk of your using. What
Yeah.
about mom? Mom must have been heartbroken. Another
Yeah.
alcoholic in the family.
Well, so I yes, I think she was, but part of my, or a lot of my story was doing enough so that nobody really intervened. So I would I think my mom was, but by the time we got to, I was maybe in ninth grade, and my brother was in eighth. He had started using as well, and very quickly his drug use took the forefront,
Oh,
which was awesome for somebody like me because then I nobody looked at me for quite a few years because he was worse than I was. So um, I thought that was great in many aspects. I also thought it was really horrible that I felt like he stole all my friends and all of a sudden he was cooler than I was and nobody wanted to hang out with. I mean, again, this is probably all perception, but we hung out in the same circles. But very quickly he kind of, since his addiction took over, it really allowed mine to just kind of be on the back burner.
wow. That doesn't surprise me a little bit. Sibling rivalry
Yeah.
extends far beyond, I mean, listen to your story. It's not,
Yeah.
it's very common to go, oh, he's such a show off and he gets all the attention and he's an athlete.
Yeah.
Now you're sitting there going, you stole my addiction. You stole my
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm the one out of control. What are you getting all the? It's amazing, an
Yeah.
amazing dynamic. And it
Yeah.
just drove you further, right? Just well,
Yeah.
I'm going to
Well,
try
it
to.
did. I think though, it actually weirdly, I was, when I was in high school, like there was a huge influx of heroin in my high school. That was something that was very much prevalent. And I realized very quickly that if you start doing heroin, you start being an IV user and you end up in treatment. And I was never going to be that person who ended up in treatment. So that was my constant like just my constant thing to myself, like, just don't do it. Don't be using IV drugs, because then you'll end up in treatment. But I was I just kind of started down this path that I wanted everyone to focus on him, because then I could continue to drink and use. And at that point I had also had a super active eating disorder. So I could kind of unravel, but I also didn't want anyone to look at me. So I always did things just enough. So I just enough past school, and I just enough was involved, and I just enough had teachers like me. So I never really got in trouble. So I could bring water bottles of vodka to school. Like I was like this kind of
Oh, it
like,
was like that, huh? It
yeah.
was like,
So I
yeah,
was
yeah.
always kind of just enough that nobody would look towards me because I wasn't the worst, and I could keep doing exactly what I was doing. And which was just master manipulation, like
Sure.
if nobody looked at me, then I could just continue to self-destruct. But I think for a while I really did believe the lie that when things stopped being hard, whatever that was, if when a guy finally liked me, or when I got into the school I wanted to get into, or when I got this, on this team or in this play or did whatever, then I would stop drinking the way I was drinking, because then things would be the way I wanted them to be. But, I kept pushing that
Yeah.
back,
Yeah, you
every,
keep, the bargaining goes on, and you keep you keep pushing the goalposts further
yeah,
back
yeah,
so that it never stops. The other cruel irony is the fact that folks like you who are in active use and can maintain enough equilibrium
yeah,
to not get jammed up. That's, on the one hand, it must seem great. Look, I'm not getting in trouble. On the other hand, it's getting worse and worse because you're good at it.
yeah.
You don't want to be good at abusing alcohol, right?
No,
And you
no.
were.
Yes,
All right.
definitely.
When did you stop being good at it? By that I mean, how did you get sober? What happened?
So towards I had gone to nursing school, but I couldn't make it through I mean, I went to 97 colleges, probably no, six or something. Never got a degree. Kept trying to get my RN, but I really couldn't keep it together for more than a year. That's all I ever had. I would have to change a job or change a school after a year because everybody would catch on. I ended up getting my LPN license, which is a nursing license in Pennsylvania. And by that time, my brother had gotten sober. My dad had been gotten sober. And I think at that point, my brother had come back up to live with or live in Pennsylvania. And he was friends with a lot of everybody that was like young AA people, and it pissed me off, and I just started to isolate from the family. And when I would come by, they would he was really like, you're pushing everything under the rug. And he was kind of for years trying to get me sober. But it wasn't until I at 27 I started having, or sometime in that last year, I started having seizures pretty often, a lot of DTs. I was my kidneys were not working very well. And I had to drink or use benzos to get through the day. And I was a nurse. So I ended up having a seizure at work. And I manipulated my mom to not tell anybody in the family. And I kept using for a couple more months. And then it really just, I think finally it became so unmanageable. I was hallucinating all the time. I don't, if anyone's familiar with alcohol withdrawal, any amount of withdrawal from alcohol it really does elicit a lot of DTs, and which are delirium tremors, so anything from hallucinations to seizures, and um and that was really scaring me, but obviously went on for about a year. And one day, my brother and sister-in-law were both working at the retreat. I'd actually worked there a year previous, but had lost my job through a series of events. And I just remember calling my sister-in-law, I guess probably a month before I did. They, the family had found out that I had a seizure and had to end up in the hospital from work. And I told my brother and sister-in-law that I was going to stop. I didn't know to need to go to treatment. I would just go to IOP, PHP, and they're like, sure. I didn't realize at that time what they were doing. Now, of course, I do. But they're like, yeah, you try it your way. You try to get sober the way you think you can get sober. And I remember going to IOP once to do like the admission, whatever, and never went back. And I just lied for weeks, months, whatever. And finally one day I was at work getting ready for a surgery and I knew I was going to have another seizure, and I just quit my job. Was like, I can't do this anymore, and I called everybody that I had met in the last several months. When people started to find out I was having seizures, people wanted to help. A lot of the people in the recovery community started trying to take me to meetings. Um, so I just kind of wanted to help. And then my brother, of course, and sister-in-law came to the rescue yet again. And my brother was like, what about going to the retreat? And I was like, I absolutely cannot go to the retreat. I work there. Everybody will know.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
and like they didn't already.
Mhm.
And finally, I don't even know how it happened, but I ended up at the retreat. I ended up getting sober at the retreat. And my old boss drove me in. Um, and it it was the best experience I could have possibly had, because I needed to break that thing where I had created such lies for myself constantly about how I had it all together. And finally I had to just say, no, this is like who I am. And I had a really horrible detox. There was a lot of time I just don't remember in treatment, but everybody allowed me to be who I was. And if there was judgment, I really don't didn't see it. And it was a really powerful experience to be
Do you,
back.
yeah. Do you think, in a sense, it was helpful that you went back to a place where you used to work and they knew you, so that you could begin peeling away the lies immediately? I mean, at a different place where they didn't know you, you
Yeah.
could be anonymous. But
Yeah.
so, do you think it was better that you were in front of people who knew you?
100%. And it was better that my brother was there, my sister-in-law. And
Mhm.
I remember, I mean, I think of my experience, I had an unbelievable therapist. And people just kept saying, like, this is who you are and this is what you need to do. I remember saying, I'm not going to go to aftercare. And they're like, oh, no, that's not an option. You stop acting like you have a choice.
Mhm.
And that was incredibly powerful to break down so much of the lies that I could have continued to tell myself, because at that point I knew, I'm,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, they talk about the bottom, getting to the bottom, and all of that. And one of the things about serious substance abuse is that when something like your kidneys begin failing you, or seizures
yeah,
overwhelm you, it tends to focus the attention.
yeah,
You can only lie, so you can lie a lot of things away. You can't lie away a seizure. I'm
yeah.
curious about one thing before we move on. So retreat was, and so that was 8, 9 years ago, right? And
Mhm.
uh, you know, have you relapsed at all at any point
I
during
have
the
not. I have not. I've
That's
been
great.
sober. Yeah, I mean, it really, I do have to say, I walked into a lot of, not only did I go to the retreat and I stayed around there, went to, PHP, then IOP, a lot of orchestration by my brother and sister-in-law who really helped to insulate me. Um, but yeah, so I definitely, I had some challenges that first year, a lot of really sick behavior, but I never picked up a drink again.
That's
And
fantastic.
yeah,
It's fantastic. I'm curious about the nursing profession. It's interesting. You apparently decided you'd like to be a nurse
Yeah,
at an early age,
yeah,
and nursing's tough. It's about
yeah,
taking care of other people, and there you were, a wreck.
yeah.
Is that straight? How does that happen? How does it come about that you can't take care of yourself, but you're really interested in taking care of other people?
I think it's easier to take care of other people.
Oh,
I think,
really? Right.
yeah, I actually think, I mean, that's kind of been something that in sobriety I've had to learn, that it's not it's not enough to maintain my mind, my emotional sobriety, to be a good mom and a good wife and a good friend and a good sister and a good daughter. Like that all is great. But if I'm not taking care of myself and maintaining my program, I'm really only going to be able to do those things for a little bit of time until I get resentful. And when I was a nurse and using, um, I really could only stay at a job for a year because I could only maintain this illusion for a bit of time, and then
Sure. Were you getting
yeah,
your drugs from illicitly from work?
I wasn't. I actually was one of those pretty chronic like people that went to lots of urgent cares. I don't know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, it was much easier to kind of urgent care hop for benzos, and then I had
Ah,
a prescription, so there was a lot of just kind of weird behavior that I was doing. But again, that was part of the things that kept me sick, that I was like, but I'm not stealing from work. So therefore I don't have a problem because I'm not stealing drugs from work.
right. Now,
Yeah.
another cruel irony.
Yeah.
I have access to all these drugs, but I
Yeah.
won't steal them, so I can continue
To use
screwing
drugs.
my life up. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, have you were you aware of and able to watch the television series Nurse Jackie? You know Nurse
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes.
Did you
Yes.
watch it?
I did watch it. I don't think I finished watching that show. I think there was like 2 seasons, but yes, I really liked that show.
Did
It
you?
was,
And you have no
yeah.
no triggering problems or any of that?
No, honestly, the kind of things that are always about like the real depth of using don't really make me, they make me feel grateful. Sometimes that little bit of, I don't know, nostalgia, but whatever. But I don't know. I'm pretty, no triggering.
Good for you, Lindsey Fetters. Here we are. I think this program will be up on the Behavioral Corner uh, website before the end of the year. In fact, I'm certain it will. So, congratulations, as I say, another year of sobriety. That's great. You're going to have a decade before you know it. It's terrific. Let me let me leave you with this question. First of all, the family's all great. You and your husband together. You've got, how many children do you have? If you have kids,
We have 4
four
kids.
kids.
Yeah, they yeah, we have a 17-year-old, a 15, oh God, he just turned 18. 18-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So, my husband, when I met him, I'd prayed my whole life for a big family, and when I met him, he had these 2 lovely children, and I probably fell in love with them at the same time I was falling in love with him.
Oh,
So,
terrific. That's
yeah.
terrific. Are you kind of a resolution person? New Year coming, do you make resolutions? You're one of those? Yeah.
Not
No,
really.
yeah, yeah, I'm not
No.
either. Not either.
Yeah.
Not either. I make them just so I can see how exotically I can break them. But anyway, let me leave you with this question. I know I sort of gave you a heads up on this. You're successful in every way. Most people want to be successful. You look healthy. You talk. You're sober. You got a terrific family. Love your husband. It's great. It's all great.
Yeah.
And you had this episode in your life years ago where you almost died,
Yeah.
and it's gone.
Mhm.
Is it? Do you find yourself in a position where you think it might be better just to put that behind you, like a bad memory, and move on, or do you think it's important for you to constantly remind yourself of where you were?
Um, I definitely think it's important to remind myself all the time. Wake up in the morning and remember I'm an alcoholic. Actually, I think every morning when I wake up, I'm very, I remember so fundamentally that I'm an alcoholic because my character defects scream at me until I start to get into action in the day. For me, that's like running, connecting to God. But if I don't remember every day, if I don't do things that help myself every day, it's a slow process, but it happens way faster than you would think. I start blaming, I'm madly in love with my husband, and I can start being like, you know what? He's the problem. You know what? My kids are the problem. You know what? I don't need to do this. And if I'm not aware, those little resentments become something big, and it makes me really uncomfortable. So I might not pick up a drink, but I'm definitely going to be miserable, and my family's going to be miserable, and I'm not going to be connected to my husband. And so, like, I have to remember, and I hope I never forget that first and foremost, I'm an alcoholic, and I have to treat this condition spiritually, like, and I have to be connected, because everything I got is because of the work that I put in. And it's not always easy, like, it's, you can go through a little bit of period of time where, I'm not going to as many meetings, I'm not talking to people in the program, and I start thinking I've got a lot of good ideas, and then things are really painful. And most of the time it shows up in my house. I start being quite frustrated with everybody in this house, and I'm just not good. And so I think it's really important to remember all the time.
Never forget. Yeah, never
Yeah.
forget.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? If never forgetting results in your success, then terrific. You're doing it right. Lindsey Fetters, thanks for joining us. We'd love to have you back at some point. Maybe when we do our television review program, we can do Nurse Jackie, and you can be a critic for us.
Yeah.
Happy New Year, continued
Thank you,
success.
too.
And
Thank you for having me.
our pleasure. No, we appreciate your time. Thank you all as well. And to you, everybody out there, same deal. Happy New Year. We'll be back on the other side, another year. Let's hope, what is it, 2023? Good Lord. Is better. See you then. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.
Retreat Behavioral Health has proudly been serving the community for over 10 years. Here at Retreat, we believe in the power of connection and quality care. We offer comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate treatment from industry-leading experts. Call 855-802-6600 or visit us at www.retreatbehavioralhealth.com to begin your journey today.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.